Welcome to the Decent People Podcast, a production of Decentral Media, where we're committed to telling the stories of the founders, builders, and visionaries who are creating a new decentralized economy and internet experience. You guys know it as Web3 or blockchain, and we're going to bring you the smartest and most interesting people in the space for intimate conversations that reveal their background, how they got into crypto in the first place, and what they're doing today to make a decentralized future a reality. Thanks so much for joining us. Make sure to check out our site at decentral.io. Now to the show.
Hey, welcome to the latest episode of the Decent People Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Laddin, and I'm here today with Jess Sloss. Jess is the co-creator of CClub, a DAO that builds investments in Web3 communities. And, really knowledgeable about cryptocurrency. And we're here to kind of, learn more about just your path and how you got to where you are, and of course what you do, but really get to learn the man behind the doing. So Jess, thank you for coming on, and really happy and thankful for your time.
I guess this is my tell-all story. Let's see where it goes. A pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, it's we'll be optioning off the rights to this afterwards. So if anyone's interested,
as an NFT, obviously, and
see
where
right.
that goes.
Absolutely. Well, Jess, as I guess let's just start maybe from the origin story. Yeah, it's back at the beginning. You're growing up. Did you ever think that you would be involved, as a in your professional life in cryptocurrency, in something so pioneering as that, DAOs, all that stuff? Was this ever, obviously not in that form as a child, but kind of getting into the entrepreneurial path? Was that something you always envisioned yourself pursuing?
Yeah, I mean, it sort of was like the path, like that was sort of that my parents had gone through, and had a number of uncles and aunts that all ran small businesses. So entrepreneurial pursuits at that point was, my dad ran a horticulture business, managing high-end gardens. That was worked very hard, had a small team. My uncle and did construction work, and so everybody kind of had their own thing, didn't work jobs in the traditional sense. So I think there's definitely a pretty clear entrepreneurial path, or at least self-employment path there. But yeah, I think like the earliest, it was a product of the 90s for the most part. And, a big part of growing up through the 90s was the internet being a thing. And a big part of the internet being a thing was sort of, startups and tech culture, and just like the technology generally, and the wild advancements that come from that. So I think it was very much shaped by that. But I think that was probably more like in my earlier days, it's like, yeah, maybe I'll go be a gardener, or I want to work outside. And then, having done that for a large part of my early career, I can tell you that's definitely not what I want to do. But I think, further into like later into high school, like the entrepreneurship path became very clear to me. And it was something I was very interested in, and had sort of, the traditional corporate path never really was something that was intriguing to me from an early age.
Sure. And along that path, I guess, how did the entrepreneurial path and tech eventually kind of coalesce? And was it, say, like an interest? And again, you're pursuing your interest, what you enjoy, and then it all kind of comes together? Or how did those two things kind of merge?
Yeah, it was like what the end of the 90s, early 2000s was this, Web 1 tech bubble. And it was captivating to me, like the stories of Mosaic and Netscape and Microsoft and Amazon and all the other pets.com, everything else that was kind of happening there. It sort of hit right when I was later in high school. And it was fascinating, right? Like all these, I think the idea of just having things that my parents didn't quite get, and that most people didn't quite get, but that I felt I had insight into because of the communities I was able to be plugged into, or what my friends were interested in, or just what made more sense. It was just this I think, pretty clear inevitability that tech was a thing, and that if you wanted to live sort of an interesting life and have an interesting career, being a part of it in some way would kind of be worthwhile. I think like probably looking back and connecting the dots, there was a lot more consistencies there, but I was just fascinated with this idea of, being able to apply creativity through a business lens and what that might create. And I think that's, continued to be my fascination.
Hmm. And was there along that path? So, you're in high school, you figure out that there's alignment in these two ventures, being an entrepreneur, tech. Was there like a first win or experience that validated that this could also be not only sustainable, but it was more than just hey, I'm pursuing interest. I'm actually there's an outlet for this that can sustain myself.
Well, I had a grade 10 teacher who I think it was like, maybe the class was called Infotech, which is just like a phenomenal name for a class. I would think we should probably bring it back. Infotech 3, maybe I would call it. But
yeah.
But he was just, an incredibly supportive guy, and Mr. Mackay. And he, just this idea of like introducing somebody at that age, I think, to the tools of like, hey, you can go build your own website, or you can go, here's a tutorial on learning Visual Basic, and look at all the cool things that can be done. And just this sort of like growth in the number of superpowers that the internet was going to bring to people, I think was the thing that maybe just sort of opened the door to me, and had the early encouragement just to lean into it. But I'm not a technical guy beyond maybe early HTML, which was fun, but really not where I sort of leaned in. And so for after graduating high school, I started a lawn care company to pay my way through university. When did business school, but needed to sort of pay my way through business school. I remember my old man coming to me and being like, "So, how you gonna pay for school?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, right. Gotta pay for school." I live in Canada, so school isn't like as crazy as some of y'all down in the United States.
Sure.
With, but it's still money. And so he ended up, selling me rather cheaply a pickup truck, a lawnmower, a line trimmer, and a blower, and was like, "Hey, here's how you go do it. I'll give you a couple of jobs, but you should probably go find your own clients and go have fun." And ended up doing that for 5 years in the summers, which paid for school. And ended up, so I think through that lens, like it was sort of the Web2 wave that kind of more captured my attention and made it very clear to me that there was a big opportunity here for me personally in a career. Like I had run this business. I think the very first phone line I had a fax machine attached to it. I had a checkbook.
Nice.
By the end, and I was putting ads in the newspaper and getting random messages and being like, "This is just obviously not the way." Knocked on a lot of doors. It's kind of the way I built my business. And then Google and some of these early Web2 companies come around and you go, "Oh, okay, like this is an entirely new way for me to have like I could approach this business completely in a new way." And there's a huge competitive advantage for me because most of the other old dudes that are running these businesses have no idea what the hell the internet is, period. And so it just very clearly unlocked a whole new world. And ended up jumping in and working with an early YouTube producer, and kind of been early in social media that way. And had my hands in on the ground floor of that new wave really, really early. And I think it's in a very similar way with Web3. Once you kind of get in and you realize there's some of these secrets that are kind of like hiding in plain sight, like the world is different and most people don't know it yet. And that's like incredibly exciting. And so had that wave sort of in the early 2000s.
Awesome. And it's not on two thoughts come to mind. It's like, one, it sounds like you had both from your teacher and in a way your father, you had these sort of Mr. Miyagi figures, to borrow from Karate Kid, who kind of helped guide you along the path, but also encouraged your interests, which I think is really important, especially in those formative years when you're figuring it out, trying to move around, navigate life. And then, somebody can kind of not only guide, but also shine a beacon on something that's really exciting to you. And then not only, hey, here's something that's exciting, but here's how you can apply yourself to be part of that excitement. So that's pretty cool. And it also sounds like, from the using the lawn care company to pay for school, and the advancements of technology that in how you grew that client base to now, advent of the more popularized internet, and go from fax to Google. It's like there seems to be a certain adaptability too, and an eye for opportunity where other people, just as you said, it's like hiding in plain sight. So how much of your success has been the ability to kind of, you know, almost see where other people aren't, or see the same thing that people are looking, but just see the opportunity in it and be like, no, this is huge.
Yeah, I think those things are actually pretty tied together. Like the idea of having, my dogs are barking right now. Apologies, guys.
No, your dogs agree.
They're like, oh, this is totally thing. See around corners. I think like the having the early supporters who are just like, yeah, you should go for it. Like you cannot underestimate the value that creates. Like it's just such a powerful thing for like, and I think that it was the thing that like it was the reality for me, but I think a lot of people don't have that, especially early in life, and or even get the opposite, which is like you're crazy for even considering doing that weird thing. And so yeah, from early on, it was just like, yeah, of course you go do your own thing and figure it out. That's cool. Like pull on those threads, and it'll probably be cool. It'll work, or if not, you'll figure it out. So it creates this sort of like foundation that was pretty powerful. But yeah, without a doubt, like I mean, if I look back, for 4 years, like my career was doing a variety of different things to, mediocre success, I think, trying to find what that thing really was. And lots of great opportunities, without a doubt had my share of successes, but just being very open and willing to follow my interests, I think in some ways, very much led me to where I am today, and that I can sort of in a position to lean in, and was in a position to lean in a big way when CClub started, almost a year and a half ago. But also, like following those interests can kind of lead to a career where you're jumping from thing to thing and things don't quite feel right, and you're kind of open to new things. So I think there's both a big superpower that comes from it, but there was times definitely where I thought it was a hindrance, but without a doubt, very comfortable in uncertainty. Not that it's anxiety inducing as it is, I think, to anybody, but I think apparently I'm good at it. And yeah, I think right now it's interesting just to see how people are looking at our entire space and are trying to see like what even is this. And I just have had the pleasure of being able to build an amazing network of human beings that just look a little bit deeper at things, or look a little bit sideways at things. And I don't ever feel like I'm, out on a ledge by myself in any of this sort of stuff. I'm surrounded by the people that I admire and that I trust and I'm fascinated with. And so yeah, maybe we get to see around corners, but really I think it's just like this mutual delusion and excitement that sometimes works out well.
Right. Which is so cool in the sense that sometimes having the group, I think, around that you've cultivated is really important too, because it can also feel isolating if say you're one person who has call it a forward thinking mentality, and it's almost like if your group doesn't share that, then you might feel like the alien. And even though you might be the most progressive thinking person there, so how much do you think? Yeah, is it? I think
100%. Well, yeah, like I can imagine doing this without. I mean, like what early on it was, yeah, a Facebook group of entrepreneurs that a friend of mine put together from around the world, where all of a sudden you're like, not only was it normal to do these things, but also was like expected to do them well, and like the leveling up that could come from being in that community was very significant. And now I think it's just like the billion different groups and chats and stuff. Like it's just very I think increasingly easy to kind of find those types of people who can help make sense of the world in ways that are useful to you. But I think, yeah, I read these biographies of like, guys, the founders of Standard Oil, even Steve Jobs, before the internet, like that must have been an incredibly isolating thing to have and the sort of fortitude that you must have and your vision to be able to like move through that uncertainty when everybody's like, what the hell? It's just a bunch of like nonsense, right? Like, so yeah, I think I really admire that craziness, I guess. And I think it happens today. And I think it's like the downside today of this is that it is very easy to get sucked into these bubbles that are sort of self-referencing. And so I think you see that in Web3, both on the sort of people who are deep in it, and obviously there's like a lot of delusion, I think, that exists in any of these markets. But you also see it, I think, for groups of people who are very anti, say, something like NFTs, right? Like we as a group believe NFTs are evil and bad, as gamers or as certain types of artists, et cetera. And not the most helpful to have such a thin understanding of what's actually happening and such a strong opinion. So I think there's pluses and minuses, and I think it's there's always new landmines that you have to kind of navigate around.
Sure. On that tip, and maybe this can help kind of clarify for folks who might not be as familiar with, say, Web3, or maybe they've made it this far into the podcast and they're like, well, I still don't know what exactly.
He just cuts grass.
Yeah. Is he still part of the landscaping business? Like
CClub.
Can I ring him up? I need some help with my plants. Maybe you could talk a little bit about, what Web3 is and how, CClub plays a role in that, and how you launched CClub, what the purpose of it is, and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I think like being really early into tech and into Web 2, being really early users of social media platforms, and being very excited and sort of pulled up into the excitement of the democratization of the internet and the accessibility and power. I mean, the ability to launch a blog just blew me away back in the day. I can have this sort of, anybody in the world can read this, like that's absolutely wild. But it also sort of gave me a front row seat to the negative outcomes that were going to come from these centralized networks. And maybe not so much the censorship and sort of like the division that's been created in society because of them, but more so for me early on, at least, was this really clear values misalignment. Like I was spending a lot of time and effort, and sometimes clients were spending a lot of money to go build these audiences on Facebook and on YouTube, to be able to like reach my customers and my fans. And then all of a sudden, because Facebook or YouTube was becoming very successful, they would turn off that organic reach, and instead you'd have to sort of pay to access the same fans that you were, reaching organically previously. And so I started to see this like, here I am, and we are creating value through content and through network effects that are ultimately leading to $1 trillion companies. But as individuals, we not only have no say in them, but we also have no way to participate in that value creation. And so early on, crypto, I guess, tokens were a pretty exciting potential solution to this. The idea that tokens, these digital assets, represent an ownership stake or a governance stake in a network. I thought was like a fundamental shift and unlock for solving this big problem of like, here we are as human beings creating a lot of value in these networks, but we're not able to capture them. Only investors are able to capture them, or maybe public market participation later on. The first Uber driver creating untold amount of value, but getting no exposure to the IPO, I think is insane. And so to me, tokens were a solution to that. And so tried to about my first Ethereum in 2016 because I heard about the DAO and I was like, that's fascinating. But again, not a technical guy, so was unable to actually get it in, which was good because the DAO was hacked and would have lost my money. And then, in 2017, had a friend send me a note on Facebook and being like, hey, have you heard about tokens? And I was like, what the hell is a token? And rabbit hole emerges, and I kind of jumped down, and it was really this idea of I believe we're part of in the middle of this like multi-decade shift from the firm to the network as being like the core way that we organize our economy. I still think we're fairly early in that shift. If you try to go send a bank wire anytime recently, you'll agree with me. It's still cumbersome, but I think Web3 sort of starting to reimagine, like, okay, well, as networks are actually dominant in our economy, like one of the downsides is they can become very centralized and controlled, and negative outcomes can result from that. And so things like Bitcoin and Ethereum and Uniswap, and we're just seeing this like reimagining of infrastructure where tokens and user ownership are kind of embedded in the belief system there, or in like the value system. And you start to see that same idea kind of move up the stack as that technology advances. So not only is it just infrastructure, now it's platforms and it's applications. And what we noticed at CClub was that tokens are being used by communities to create and capture value in new, interesting ways. And ultimately, communities are, I think, the way, or people coming together on the internet is the way that value has been created on the internet since Web 1. And our insight was that, well, tokens probably give communities some new superpowers. We just don't really know exactly what those superpowers are or or how to best apply them. And so CClub was really born with that idea. Like, how do we, if we believe that networks are taking over and that ownership of networks are going to be key, and that communities are themselves networks, and tokens are the way to have sort of ownership or or governance or say or control in these communities / networks. Some cool things are going to result from that. And so we started off as 11 people in a Telegram group, and have since sort of evolved into running I think an industry-leading accelerator that helps communities explore how they might put tokens to use to ensure that their people profit rather than the platforms themselves. And so, it has been quite the process so far. We're in our 4th cohort that's kicking off next week, and I think have learned a lot and have much more to learn as well.
Yeah. Wow. That's super, super cool. And you say, so 11 people in a Telegram group. Was there like a moment or a set of experiences along that journey where you were like, okay, or maybe it could have been getting 11 people in a Telegram group, but basically like, hey, I think the moment or experience where you're like, all right, hey, I think CClub actually, this is the thing, like this is what we're gonna do. And
CClub has just been a series of experiences like that. Like it's just like, okay, social tokens, community tokens are a thing. I had a bunch of friends that were launching them or doing interesting things with them, so they all had similar questions. So we brought the folks together into a Telegram chat, and then decided we wanted to go do things together. So we created a hackathon and we ran an event, and we're like, well, actually the way to learn is probably just to get other people who are interested in this together and see what we can co-create together. And so we did our first cohort, then we did a bigger event, and then we formalized it. It was just sort of a series of like momentum building activities. And I think that's what's really interesting about, like if we think about the difference today compared to say 99 or 2000 or, even 5 or 6 years ago, when you wanted to start a startup, you were building technology and you're using that technology to go and, you're probably founding a company, you're then building technology, and then you're going to go build a community around that technology. It's maybe a way of, furthering your market dominance or go to market, et cetera. I think what we're seeing today is that we have this pathway to use community as the starting point. So like if we get people together on an adventure, and we're able to use that to bring social and financial capital together, and we have these new tools that give us, a shared bank account and maybe something that looks kind of like a cap table, and our ability to kind of align incentives over the long term. What might we go create? And I think CClub is an example of that, where we had social capital at first, and then we're able to form some financial capital, and those two things combined have sort of allowed us to continue to level up both our organization, the number of people that we're working with, the projects we're working with, and our attention more broadly. So I think it has constantly been this like, whoa, what is this thing? That's super cool. I'm all here for it, and I hope it continues to be.
Awesome. And how important then is it, especially with DAOs and sort of call the pooling of communal resources to advance a particular set of goals or a goal or project? Is it that from the base level that everybody's on board with the larger mission? I think it would be, it sounds like it would be, if you saying that out loud, it sounds like, hey, that's a no-brainer. Like everyone should be completely with it. But to your point on being in a for fear of being in a bubble and having everybody kind of, being, is there any, do you have contrary opinions, or like, how do you mitigate having, that type of voice within the group?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think there's this idea that you do need to have some sort of shared purpose or mission. I think at least to start at some point, and I think arguably over the long term, right? Like what is, we look at DAOs or at least communities with tokens as more like the evolution of a startup or of like an LLC is just being digitized. And so like the things that we've learned from building great businesses in the past, many of those things still apply, which is, to allow for people to make decisions and to be autonomous and to be able to take action. There needs to be a clear North Star that we're moving towards. I think what's interesting is that, these organizations are not as monolithic as you might have in a corporate structure. And so the ability to fork or to spin out or to do sub DAOs or other communities, I think is like a really big superpower of these organizations. So my guess is that you're going to see these really clear. We like to call it, we're looking for a big adventure. So what is the big adventure that we're going on? So the big adventure for CClub is that we believe communities, or that tokens give communities superpowers, and it's our job to help figure out what those are and enable a whole new set of entrepreneurs and projects to be birthed into the world and create an exceptional amount of value and prosperity. And people who are about that will come and be a part of our adventure. Now, what does that look like as this whole space grows and NFTs become a thing, and maybe the metaverse becomes a thing? Like, do we then just focus on that? Is that something that we should just ignore, or does that get bundled up into our core mission, or do we sort of spin out sub communities that are kind of interested in focusing on those things and resource them? I think we're going to see all of these things happen, and that there probably won't be one right answer, but that ultimately at the core of this idea of a group of people being able to bring resources, both social and financial capital, together is sort of like the big unlock. And then it's going to be up to great leaders within these organizations. And I think one of the big misnomers with DAOs is that they are leaderless organizations. In reality, they are organizations filled with leaders. The only way to be successful in a DAO is to lead in some way. And so what these organizations hopefully will do is do a great job at resourcing leaders in a multitude of ways and structures within an organization to grow. And where those lines live between that initial big adventure and ultimately where people spend their time and effort, I think will be something that we're very eager to watch and be a part of.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. And it seems, again, like in the bedrock built into what a DAO is, it feels like adaptability, from everything you're saying, is core to that success, and the ability, in the same way that you approached your early aughts of entrepreneurship in high school, figuring out, where your interests and entrepreneurship aligned, and then, moving forward beyond the fax machine. It's like there's this constant evolution that is inherent with that solo journey, but then it also seems collectively everybody, the rigidness that has perhaps plagued corporations in the past or large behemoths, it seems there's more of a malleable way of navigating in DAOs rather than traditional companies.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a reality of work today. And whether everybody's exposed to it or not yet, they will be. And I think it's a byproduct of the fact that networks don't follow the same laws of physics as like physical distribution. The normal distribution curve just doesn't really exist when there's like zero friction in information flow and ideas and capital and wealth. And so you start to see, more hits, more capital flow to fewer companies, but in bigger ways. And then, also sort of this long tail of opportunities that emerge and a lot more fluidity and variability and volatility, I guess, in like what's interesting, what's hot, the right way to do things. So I think it's just like a broad trend that we're all, we and all future generations are really going to have to figure out. And you can see this in a number of ways, like the idea of going to school in the same type of structure just doesn't seem to fit anymore. And like the idea of having a career for life, like obviously that's not going to happen. But, so yeah, I think there's like that is an assumption that I've made from pretty early on and has given me a lot of confidence just to be like, okay, well, the way to do this well is just to kind of be a part of it and be as flexible as possible and really emerge as the space or as the concept or as the understanding starts to evolve, to be able to be a part of that in a meaningful way. And 100%, if you're if you are a part of a DAO, you feel that on a day-to-day basis. Like not only are we trying to figure out this thing, but the playing field is moving. It's just probably the most dynamic space, period. So there's really no way to be certain about anything beyond, or at least we shouldn't be locked into those beliefs. I think there's this constant questioning that's required, and that leads to, interesting new evolutions and experiments and rethinking that's required. And those of those teams and individuals that are going to be better at sort of reevaluating those things and on the fly, I think are going to be in a better position to profit and win and build great things. And those that just sort of get locked into one way of thinking, which I think is probably my biggest fear, is just not evolving with the space. And I see it all around me all the time. And I'm probably going to be guilty of it. Like maybe it's an unrealistic expectation to have, but
Sure.
I think just really trying to be up to date with all that stuff is essential.
Right. Well, it's a fine line between locking into a system that works, that helps you, say, improve efficiency, and then believing that that's the way and that there's no other. All right, well, we found something that works. Like, okay, yeah, lean into the things that work, but also be open to the things that could also make the things that work better.
Yeah, well, I think within our space, it's like, what if that thing that just came out yesterday makes everything that we've done so far irrelevant? And I think that's like, yeah, I think like a legitimate possibility with most things right now. Maybe that's a little harsh, but at least that's how I think myself, and I think a lot of people that are really trying earnestly to stay up to date with this, quickly evolving space. Probably a belief that we share, right? Like that we're probably not doing it right or in the best way right now. Like it's still so nascent and they're still early in the idea maze. And so, yeah, it's very risky just to say that this is the only thing that will ever exist. And shout out to my Bitcoin maxi friends, like love you. But I think they're sort of guilty of this. And same with ETH maxi friends, and same with DeFi maxi. Like it's just, it's just so new, and man, like we don't really know what the hell we're talking about.
Which is also super cool, because there's so much room for innovation, and there's so much room for carving the path. Like, I think that's a really unique opportunity to be on the front lines, and while you're simultaneously building a company, a community, you're also in like real time affecting the change. Like it's kind of this, as you mentioned, this intertwined ball of a forward moving entity.
Yeah, I think it goes even back to, like, I find a lot of freedom and permission that comes from just being cool with not knowing what is right or what is best. I mean, maybe not a good idea of what we believe to be best, and we're definitely, very aggressively, advancing that. But when there is no correct, perfect, right way to do something, it does create a lot more latitude for experimentation and for mistakes and for risk. And I think if I go back to early in my career, that's, essentially what I had around me as support was like, yeah, you have this latitude to go take risk and experiment and be wrong. And I very much feel like, that exists today in this Web3 world. And I think there's a strong correlation between being able to act and live like that in an early phase of a technology and success.
And would you say that ability to take risks is something that I feel like it's perhaps something kind of like what you were saying, one's ability to stomach anxiety, like the ability to take risks and the ability to use anxiety as sort of a tool, or to feed off of it in a positive way. Are those inherent qualities that people possess that, make them unique and help them, or is that something you can learn, in your experience?
I don't know. I mean, I think like if I think about just the number of the amount of luck that I have had in my life, both, grew up in Canada, so I don't worry about healthcare. I had access to great education for not a whole lot of money. Had a really supportive family, have a really supportive family, been in good health. Like, I think there's just, like, I'm very, very aware of the privilege that, has been bestowed upon me in life. And I think part of that privilege, is I think there is some ingrained, I don't think I necessarily learned how to there's some personality pieces in there, I'm sure. But it's that whole package that has sort of allowed me to get to, whatever level of success I have today. And also I think that is I think if I sit here today and I think about, I was talking to a friend last night and he's like, don't you just feel stress over like the responsibility that you have to people who backed you and to people who are, if you're taking money from other people. And I said, yeah, that's not really where my stress comes from. My stress comes from, wanting to do right by the people who put their faith in me. So that's the people that are working, that I get to work with, or put their faith into CClub as a broad organization that we've built. Like, I want to make sure we do right there. But more so, I see as just this immense gift that's been put on the table for us to go and do something big with, which is, it's a great idea at the right time at the right place that we think is going to really work out well, but might not, and have just been surrounded by amazing human beings and supportive human beings, and the right time and in the market to just have this, huge opportunity to go do well. And so I just, that's really what drives me on a regular basis, is, feeling like here's this amazing uncut diamond that we just, get to work on every single day to cut a little bit more. And, eventually the masterpiece will reveal itself and hopefully will exist forever, and be an organization that is seen as an institution and has a major impact on, thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of people. And so it feels like almost like, hey, the big leagues are here. You got 2 at-bats, like make them count. But also don't have like I think that would be a hell of a lot more stressful actually with all those people. I don't feel that level of stress. It's
you see the opportunity in front of you, and the impact it can have, and it's more just doing what you do well, and leading and managing the team, and
showing up, and just truly it's just showing up and doing our best every day, and recognizing that shifts day to day. But what we've been able to do at CClub is just attracted an incredible community and team. I'm by far the least impactful contributor at CClub today. We have incredible human beings that are running all aspects of our organization, that have no control over, that, are on a mission in and to themselves, that are trying to create value for our organization, and are represented in that organization through membership and governance tokens. And, and so you start to see like the nascent network that's being built there, and the engine of value creation there. It's just incredible. And, I think of like DAOs as the culmination of 3 areas of leverage, which is, capital, it's technology, and it's people. And we have done a good job of bringing those 3 things together, and I hope we continue to.
Awesome. Do you find do you use the same, you said Telegram, 11 people on that initial chat, is the same sort of technology that you could say other startups employ, Slack, Telegram, stuff like that? How do you guys keep a kind of disparate community intact, given that location is no longer, being all present in the same area is kind of not the norm anymore?
It's actually incredible the impact the pandemic has had on how much that's not the norm anymore. And I think like I would not sure we would have been able to go do what we did pre-pandemic, and that there would have been much more of an expectation to be in one place. And so I think that's something we're going to look back on as years go by as being a fairly impactful thing. The tools leave a lot to be desired, and we're very active in trying to bring new and better tools for DAOs into the space. But today, usually the core tool set would be, of course, email, but Discord is a community platform that's used most often. It allows for us to use tools like Guild or Collabland to token gate access, so that we could say you have to hold a number of tokens to be able to access this Discord, which creates a unique dynamic where people have a sense of an ownership stake in these communities. And I think it's a really clear Web3 tie-in to tokens being kind of the core or central part of where value accrues in these organizations. And I think we're going to see that idea sort of spread out to pretty much all other types of work management tools. So, we see Clarity is like an evolution of Notion, where token ownership and permissions are sort of embedded in it. We use both of those tools, Notion and Clarity, as a way of managing our workflow. Still use Gmail for email and Google Docs, but there's these decentralized storage tools and Git books and different tools that also make that a little bit easier to do in a more decentralized way. So I think there's like this longer evolution that we're going to need to get on as these new primitives start to either get embedded in Web2 tools, or new ones get created and unlock new value for organizations like ours. But we still struggle with all the same challenges that any organization struggles with, which is like, how do you get on the same page? How do you make sure things get done? How do you communicate clearly? How do you work in public, even though some of the stuff that you're doing maybe shouldn't be public right away? So how do you manage that? No shortage of friction areas within the operations of, I think, remote teams generally, but with DAOs, we're really trying to create opportunities to reduce information asymmetry and allow for more emergent participation. It creates a unique set of challenges that I think really great teams are sort of working their way through right now.
Awesome. On that tip, what at CClub, what do you guys have? What are you guys working toward? What's the next thing on the horizon? Can you, I guess, wrap with what we can expect to see in the coming months and years?
Yeah, I mean, core to CClub is our accelerator program, where we work with 20-ish amazing DAOs or communities with tokens every quarter. And our job is to choose really great projects and to help them be very successful out in the world. And so the outward visibility you'll see just an increasing number of really great projects that have either come through our past cohorts or these future ones really hit the mainstream in big ways. I think people are going to be really excited about just the new ways people can get involved in these organizations, the missions, the impacts they'll have, and it touches everything from reimagining what festivals and our artist collective should look like, all the way through to a team that's trying to buy and operate an NBA sports franchise, and literally everything in between. And so I think what people will likely see is those projects breaking into the mainstream, and behind the scenes, I think CClub is just going to continue to get better at finding great projects, supporting great leaders, and helping them design structures that are going to be successful long term. So if people are out there thinking about, if they're operating in a community or they're interested in launching a community-based project, CClub.xyz is the best place for you to go. You can find out about our next cohorts and the programs and educational opportunities that we run. And then we can also introduce you through that to this growing list of amazing projects that, if you're interested in something like, I don't know, apparel, or, consumer packaged goods, or golf, or just music, we have something for you, and there's a community that's trying to do something novel and new and interesting, and we'd love to connect you with those adventures.
Amazing. Well, Jess Sloss, thank you so much. This has been a really great conversation. Really appreciate you coming on the Decent People podcast, and really excited to see and hear what continues to come out of CClub and what continues to be innovated on.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephen.
All right.